The whispers followed him like a curse. No woman lasted a night with him. They said it in the corridors of the obsidian palace. They said it in the training grounds where warriors bled beneath the silver moon. They said it in trembling breaths behind jeweled fans during royal banquets. And every whisper carried the same name, Alpha King Kale Draven, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. A ruler carved from shadow and steel. A man whose wolf had never bowed, never broken, never forgiven. They said his temper was lethal. They said his touch burned. They said the women who were sent to his chambers left before dawn, shaking, rejected, or shattered by a presence too overwhelming to endure. No one lasted until the kingdom of nightfall lay beneath a sky the color of spilled ink. Towers of black stone pierced the heavens, their silver banners snapping violently in the wind. Wolves howled from the cliffs, their cries echoing across forests dusted in frost. Inside the palace gates, torches burned blue. And Mira Vale stood alone before them. She wasn't trembling. That alone made the guards uneasy. State your purpose. One growled, eyes glowing faintly gold. I've come to serve the Alpha King, she said quietly. Serve, the word carried weight. In Nightfall, serving the Alpha King meant one thing. The council chose women of strong lineage to try to calm the storm within him. Political alliances disguised as companionship. None had succeeded. The guard studied her. She wore no jewels, no silk, no trembling fear. Only a simple midnight dress and eyes the color of early dawn. You know what happens to them, he warned. Yes. And you still came. Her chin lifted. Yes. Hours later, Mira stood inside the throne room. It was vast, ceiling vanishing into darkness, walls etched with ancient wolf sigils glowing faintly silver. A cold wind seemed to live inside the chamber itself, breathing through the pillars. At the far end, seated upon a throne carved from black marble and wolf bone, was him. Kale Draven. He did not rise when she entered. He did not need to. Power rolled from him like thunderclouds gathering before a storm. His black hair fell slightly over sharp eyes that burned molten amber. A scar traced his jaw, not marring his beauty but sharpening it. Predatory, untouchable, he looked bored. So, his voice rumbled low and dangerous. The council sends another sacrifice. Mira did not bow. The guard stiffened, Kale's gaze sharpened. You do not kneel. I don't belong to you, she replied calmly. Not yet. The room went silent. Even the torches seemed to still. For the first time in months, perhaps years, interest flickered in the Alpha King's eyes. You have courage, he said slowly, or stupidity. Maybe neither, she answered. Maybe I'm simply not afraid. A soft laugh left him. Dark, almost amused. No woman enters my chambers without fear. Then perhaps no woman has entered for the right reason. His wolf stirred. He felt it, a ripple beneath his skin, a tension he hadn't experienced since before the wars, since before betrayal carved ice into his heart. Take her, he ordered. The guards escorted Mira toward the royal wing. She walked without hesitation. Behind her, Kale remained seated, but his eyes never left her retreating figure. Something about her scent lingered. Not submission, not ambition, peace, and that unsettled him more than fear ever could. The Alpha King's chambers were enormous floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit cliffs. Dark velvet draped the walls. A massive bed stood at the center, like a battlefield, waiting for casualties. Mira stepped inside. The doors closed behind her with a heavy thud. Moments later, the air shifted. He was there. Kale entered without sound, the door slamming shut behind him. The temperature dropped instantly. You still have time to beg for release, he said, removing his leather gloves slowly. No shame in walking away before you break. She turned to face him. Do you want me to? His eyes flashed. No. The honesty startled them both. He approached her in slow, deliberate steps. Each one carried dominance. His presence alone was enough to make most women tremble. Mira didn't move. When he stood before her, their height difference forced her to tilt her head slightly upward. His scent, wild forest, rain, and danger, surrounded her. Why are you not shaking? He murmured. Because I don't see a monster. His jaw tightened. You should. I see a man who hasn't slept properly in years. Silence. A dangerous silence. His wolf snarled inside him, not in anger. In confusion. How dare you? He whispered. But there was no real threat in it. Mira did something no one had done before. She reached up, not to seduce, not to provoke, but gently, carefully. She brushed her fingers against the scar along his jaw. Cale froze. The world seemed to narrow to that single touch. Who hurt you? She asked softly. A memory flashed behind his eyes. Betrayal, blood, a Luna who chose power over bond. His voice turned ice. You presume too much. Then send me away. He didn't. Minutes passed, heavy. Tense, instead of pushing her against the wall, instead of asserting dominance the way he always did, he stepped back. Get on the bed, he ordered. She obeyed, not submissively, simply trusting. She lay down atop the covers, folding her hands over her stomach like someone preparing for sleep. Cale stared. What are you doing? Waiting. For what? For you to decide whether you're going to prove the rumors true. The corner of his mouth twitched. No one spoke to him like this. He extinguished the torches with a flick of his hand. Only moonlight filled the room now, casting silver shadows across his sharp features. He removed his boots, his cloak. He lay beside her, not touching, not yet. The mattress dipped under his weight. Minutes passed. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Cale expected flinching, breathing changes. Fear. Instead, her breathing slowed, softened, evened. He turned his head slightly. Mira Vale was asleep. Not pretending, not tense, truly asleep, in the arms of the most feared Alpha King in the North. Cale did not understand it. He had roared in his sleep before, thrashed, his wolf restless and violent from old wounds. Women had fled screaming before dawn. But she shifted closer unconsciously. Her hand found his chest, warm, trusting, his wolf stilled. For the first time in years, silence filled his mind. No rage, no torment, just quiet. Cale Draven stared at the ceiling until the moon began to fade. And he did not move, because if he did, he feared the peace would disappear. Outside the palace, the whispers continued. No woman lasts a night, but inside the Alpha King's chambers, dawn crept in through silver light. And for the first time in his reign, Cale Draven did not wake alone. The morning the kingdom held its breath dawn arrived quietly. Golden light spilled through the towering windows of the Alpha King's chambers, brushing against black velvet curtains and gliding across the massive bed at the center of the room. Cale was already awake. He had been for hours, but he hadn't moved. Mira still slept against him, her cheek resting over his heart as if it were the most natural place in the world. One hand lay curled against his chest, fingers relaxed, trusting. Trust, the word felt foreign. No one had trusted him in years. They obeyed, they feared, they desired, but trust, never. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, not restless, not violent, simply aware. Calm, in a way Cale had almost forgotten was possible. He studied her face in the morning light. No tension. No hidden calculation, just softness. Why? He murmured quietly, barely audible even to himself. As if sensing his gaze, Mira shifted. Her lashes fluttered open slowly. For a moment she looked confused. Then she realized where she was. In his arms, in the Alpha King's bed, still alive, instead of panic, her lips curved slightly. Good morning, she said softly. Cale blinked. Women usually woke in shock, fear, regret. She sounded like someone greeting the sun. You're not afraid? He said, searching her face for cracks. Should I be? You survived the night. She studied him for a long moment. You didn't hurt me. It wasn't accusation, it was fact. He sat up slowly, breaking the contact between them. The sudden loss of warmth unsettled him more than he expected. I lose control, he said flatly, in my sleep, in my anger, in my wolf. You didn't last night. Something tightened in his chest. You think one night changes what I am. I think one night shows what you can be. Her calm confidence unsettled him more than rebellion ever could. A sharp knock interrupted them. Cale's expression hardened instantly. Enter. The heavy doors creaked open, and Beta Commander Riven stepped inside. His silver, streaked hair was tied back tightly, his posture rigid. But when his eyes landed on Mira sitting very much alive in the Alpha King's bed, something close to shock flickered across his face. "My king," Riven said carefully, "the council requests confirmation." "Of what?" Kale asked coolly. "That she departed." Mira's brows lifted slightly. Kale's gaze darkened. "She remains," he said. Silence fell like a dropped blade. Riven processed the words slowly. "Remains willingly." Kale's eyes slid briefly toward Mira. "Yes." Riven lowered his head, though surprise still radiated from him. "The kingdom is already whispering," he admitted. "They expected the usual. The usual is over," Kale replied coldly. Riven nodded once and left. When the doors shut again, the weight of what had just happened settled between them. "You've changed something," Kale said quietly. "I didn't do anything. You stayed." She met his gaze evenly. "So did you." By midday, the entire palace buzzed like a disturbed hive. Servants stared. Warriors paused training to glance toward the royal wing. The council gathered in a chamber lined with ancestral portraits, their voices sharp with disbelief. "No one lasts," one elder hissed. "She must have used some charm." Another muttered, or perhaps, a calmer voice interjected, "The king chose not to break her." That possibility unsettled them more than sorcery ever could. A calm alpha was unpredictable, a healed alpha. Dangerous to those who thrived on his instability. Kale stood on the palace balcony overlooking the training grounds. Mira joined him silently. Below, wolves shifted and sparred, claws tearing into dirt. "They fear what they cannot control," she observed. "They fear weakness. You mistake peace for weakness." He turned to her. "You speak boldly for someone with no power here." She stepped closer to the railing, the wind catching her dark hair. "I have the only power that matters to you." His eyes narrowed slightly. "And what is that?" "You sleep." The bluntness almost made him laugh. "You think that makes you irreplaceable?" "No," she said calmly. "I think it makes you human." The word struck deeper than any blade. Human, not monster, not weapon, not king, just a man. A sudden roar erupted below. Two warriors had shifted fully, claws flashing as they clashed violently. Kale's wolf reacted instantly, dominance flaring, anger rising. Mira felt it. The air changed, charged. Dangerous, his breathing sharpened. "Kale," she said gently. His name on her lips cut through the rising storm. He looked at her, and instead of rage consuming him, it ebbed, like a tide pulling back from shore. The warriors below froze, sensing the shift in their alpha's aura. Not explosive, controlled. Riven stared up from the grounds, stunned. Mira exhaled slowly. "You see," she whispered. Kale stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You calm him," he said. "Who?" "My wolf." She didn't smile in triumph. She didn't claim victory. She simply nodded. "Maybe he's just tired of fighting." That evening, tension thickened inside the palace halls. The council demanded audience. Kale sat upon his throne once more, Mira standing beside him, not below, not behind, beside. The elders entered in dark ceremonial robes. "This is reckless," one began. "You allow her influence after one night. You question my judgment." Kale's voice lowered dangerously. "We question the sudden shift in your behavior." Mira remained silent, observing, learning. "You sent women to my bed like offerings," Kale said coldly. "And now you protest when one is not discarded." The elder stiffened. "You were unstable." "I was grieving." The word echoed. "Grieving, not broken, not monstrous. Grieving." Silence followed. Mira stepped forward slightly, with respect. She said calmly, "You built a kingdom around his pain. Perhaps you should consider what happens when that pain begins to heal." The elders stared at her as if she'd spoken treason. But Kale did not silence her. That was answer enough. That night, when darkness fell again over nightfall, Kale returned to his chambers with Mira. The air felt different, not tense, not heavy, anticipatory. He stood before her near the window, moonlight casting silver across his sharp features. "You understand what this means," he said quietly, "if you stay." "I do. You will not be temporary." Her heart skipped once, but she didn't look away. "Neither will you." A slow breath left him. Carefully, almost hesitantly, he reached for her hand. This time not as a test, not as a challenge, but as a choice. When he pulled her gently against his chest, it wasn't dominance that wrapped around her. It was warmth. His wolf settled instantly. Mira rested her head beneath his chin, and once again, the Alpha King of Nightfall fell asleep in silence. Not because he was exhausted, but because he was finally at peace. Outside the palace walls, the whispers changed. No woman lasted a night. They had said, now they murmured something new. She stayed. And for the first time in years, the kingdom waited not for destruction, but for what would happen next. Shadows of desire, the days that followed, were unlike anything Nightfall had ever seen. Cale Draven walked the palace halls with Mira at his side, not behind him, not beneath his notice. Every step she took beside the Alpha King was a statement, an unspoken declaration that the old rules no longer applied. Whispers traveled faster than the wind. Servants exchanged nervous glances. Warriors paused mid-training. The council fumed in silent fury behind closed doors, but Cale didn't care, not because he was careless. Because for the first time in years, someone had found the cracks in his armor, and instead of taking advantage, she offered calm. That night, the moon hung full and luminous over the cliffs. Wolves patrolled the borders, their howls harmonizing with the rhythmic crash of waves below. Cale led Mira to the palace gardens, a secret space few had ever seen. The gardens were a tangle of midnight flowers, silver fountains, and statues of past alphas carved in grim stone. Moonlight turned the petals into pale ghostly flames. He stopped near a fountain, water glinting like liquid stars. "You are dangerous," he admitted quietly, voice almost lost in the rush of the water. Mira tilted her head, curious. "How? Because you see me," he said, amber eyes dark and molten. "All of me. Not just the crown, not just the rage, not just the wolf, but all the rest." She smiled softly. "And what do you see in me?" Cale took a breath, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Someone who isn't afraid. Someone who isn't pretending to be what she is not. Her hand brushed against his, light as a whisper. Sparks traveled along his skin, igniting his wolf. The pull was immediate, magnetic, fierce. Cale's wolf growled low in his throat, a warning, a demand. A plea. Mira leaned closer, her voice soft. "I am not leaving, Cale." The Alpha King stared at her, the moonlight revealing every line of his sharp, haunted features. For a moment silence held them both captive, not the silence of waiting, but the silence of understanding. "You know what people say," he whispered, "what they always said." "I do," Amira said calmly, "and I don't care." Cale's hands moved instinctively, gripping her waist with just enough pressure to ground her, to claim her, yet not break the fragile trust that had taken him hours to earn. The wolf inside him roared, demanding, clawing for release. Yet he held himself back, because he knew if he did, she might flee, and he could not, would not let her go. "You are mine," he said in a low, dangerous rumble, "and I am yours." Mira's lips curved, but she did not speak. She let the words sink into the spaces between them. She let him hold her, let him claim her in a way no one had before. The wind shifted, moonlight danced across the garden, and the Alpha King, feared and lethal, let himself finally feel something beyond the edge of control. Desire, protection, and trust all wrapped into one intoxicating pulse. Hours later, they returned to the chambers. Cale's guards glanced at the bed warily. It had been a battleground of broken hearts and shattered illusions for years. But now it held something new. Mira sat at the edge of the bed, removing the simple cloak she had worn during the day. Cale stood behind her, silently observing, his amber eyes darkening as his wolf stirred. "Why don't you run?" he asked softly. She looked up, meeting his gaze evenly. "Because I don't want to. Not now. Not ever." Cale's hand brushed her hair from her face. The touch was delicate, almost reverent. His wolf whined softly, confused by the strange mix of surrender and dominance. "You are breaking me," he said, voice low. "Maybe I'm saving you," she replied. The bed became their world, not as a place of destruction as the palace had known before, but as a sanctuary, a place where the Alpha King could be both wolf and man, where Mira could be both brave and vulnerable. And as the moonlight streamed across them, casting silver shadows on walls etched with centuries of history, Cale Draven finally understood. Some nights were not meant to destroy. Some nights were meant to heal, and with her, he could begin again. Outside, the kingdom murmured in disbelief. No woman lasted a night. Now the whispers ended differently. She stayed, and she changed him. The wolves howled in approval. Or maybe warning. Cale didn't care, because inside, in the chambers, a new Alpha King had been born. Not the one of fear, but of fire tempered by trust. And Mira Vale, she was no ordinary woman. She was the only woman who could calm the storm, and in doing so, she had claimed the fiercest heart in Nightfall.